Hello, my name is James, and in today's episode of This Is How I Did That, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and show you how I approached 3 different lighting concepts from one of my latest shoots. This video is going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit more to the point, and a little bit more focused on lighting, a few things that you might need to know, a few little helpful hints along the way, and just how I approached different looks, different lighting scenarios, and just a few things that I think are important when you're looking to do these kind of looks. So I'm working with the lovely Marta. I have my makeup artist Ruby with me as well. And the first look that I've gone for today is this LED RGB lighting look, where I want to create a really strong, colourful portrait series, very strong lighting, very vivid colour, and I wanted it to look something almost straight out of a magazine or almost like an album cover, if that makes sense. So to pull this off, I've used 2 LED RGB lights. And the good thing about using LED RGB is as soon as you turn them on, you position them right, you got the right output, etc., you've already got a really good idea of what your final image will look like. When you're using camera flash, it's always a little bit trickier because you have to use the gels to make sure that it has the color light you want. And it's only when you fire it are you like, okay, maybe add a little bit more flash output to this one, or maybe we need a softer diffuser, or maybe we need to do this, modification, etc. The one thing I did notice, however, quite interestingly enough, is subconsciously, because a flash makes a noise, the model always goes into the next pose straight away. So if you are going to use LED lighting, make sure you give very clear and concise direction when you're posing your models. That's the first thing I'd say. But I do like using LED lighting, especially when they have the RGB function, because you can change the colors, you can change the tones. For this one here, I wanted to really go from like a blue to a red and create a very soft gradient, and that would go from bottom to top. Because I was shooting in that kind of landscape horizontal mode, what I've done is, instead of shooting with the soft boxes, just a standard 60 by 90 centimeter one in the normal position that they are, I've just flipped them horizontally and just put them one on top of the other. And the reason why is because it creates that very soft gradient effect, and you can see it in this series if you look from the bottom to the top, and it just creates a really nice effect. One thing to note is, don't be afraid to play around with the output of the LED lighting, because sometimes you might be like, okay, this is too strong, or that's too soft, etc. Think about your colors. I always like that blue-red combination, or like a cooler tone and a warmer tone, but there's nothing to stop you going from like warm to warm, or warm to warmer, cooler to cooler, whatever. And also just really think about how you're going to frame it. So for me, I wanted a very close, tight framed shot. Marta's just about, I think she's about a meter away from a white wall. So it's really just about kind of creating something nice and tight where those lights can really be used to their best. The one thing I did notice actually quite funnily is that in this shot, even though we're not using flash, you can kind of see some catch lights in the eyes, which really surprised me because, when you look at it on this B-roll, one's blue, one's red, but yet there they are. So yeah, nice bonus. So for concept number 2, again, I'm using the LED lighting, and I wanted to create some very stylized black and white portraits. To do that, I have used one of these. These are gold. I hope that's in focus. This is called an optical spot. I don't use this for every single shoot, but anytime I want to create patterns, shape light, really change the direction of light, and just kind of create a bit of mystery, or just kind of create a feeling to a shoot, this is something that I'm looking to use. I think this cost me $200 or $300 a couple of years ago. Sadly now it's probably like $20 million with inflation, but anyway. But this is a really, really good tool to use. And it's funny because when you start getting into portraiture in particular, or studio photography, or even just, photographing, in general, the first thing you get told is, oh, okay, move from your APS-C camera to full frame. Okay, then move from full frame to medium format. Move from a DSLR to mirrorless. Or, okay, you've got a 24-70, time to get yourself an 85mm 1.4, then a 1.2. The list goes on and on and on. And don't get me wrong, all that stuff is important. All that stuff helps. It does. But something like this can just create such a unique look, and it doesn't cost as much or anywhere as much really as a lot of the modern equipment does. These things are good because they also come with these gobos. Now gobos, if you're a little bit older, will probably have been called cookie cutters a few years ago. Basically they just create patterns, and as you can see, I'm just trying to create a unique look or a unique pattern when I'm doing this kind of look with Marta here. The tricky thing is just ensuring that you get enough of the model's face, the eyes, the look, the expressions in the shot, as opposed to showing too much shadow or too much line running through it. You want to make sure that you get a really good balance. But these things are gold. I really love using this, and as I said, it's interesting because you're often told, oh look, if you want to elevate your portraiture or your people photography or your photography skills, you get better gear. And 100%, that is a big part of it, I'm not going to lie. But your lighting needs to also be part of it, and a simple tool like this makes a world of difference. So for this final look, I wanted to go from using LED lighting to flash. I've got one strobe with a 120cm deep octabox to create nice soft light. The idea was I wanted to create a bit of a fashiony kind of look, a bit of a editorial style look, and a portrait series which was a bit nostalgic, a little bit 90s looking, and I wanted to use a lot of material incorporated into the shoot. So by using like a fabric photography background, by creasing it and making it a little bit messy, it creates a lot of patterns which work really well for black and white. Using a painter's drop sheet on the floor is a nice rough material, and that contrast works really well in this look, I think. Marta has a really, really special, unique look that comes out really nicely in this series, and even her outfit, the ripped jeans, the nice strong poses, it kind of all comes together and it all plays together. At the start she's wearing like a really big business shirt, so it kind of really plays on that, that kind of 90s look, and that's the look I wanted to create here. When you're doing these kind of shoots, don't be afraid to use different fabrics, and don't be afraid to experiment. So I've got just this plain kind of pattern dark photography background, but I'm using it the wrong way around because I liked that tone for this shoot. Painter's drop sheets, as I said in my first video, I bought that from Mitre 10 up the road. It cost me $30, but yeah, I've used it so many times because it's just such a nice material and it creates a really unique look. And these are the little things that will, I guess, kind of help you build. And also, once again, like, you don't need to be spending a fortune, or, it's just really all about the right lighting, the right look, the right background, piecing it all together to create the right concept. And of course, having the right model, the right team, and the right look, that is also a big part of it as well. But that's it. As I said, this video was going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit straight to the point. Special thanks goes out to the guys that helped me out for this shoot here. If you got questions, reach out to me at any time. And yeah, thank you. Enjoy. See you later. Bye.